And I know, and I was doing my PhD degree today. I was giving an interview, and I remembered some of the memories of my totally unsuccessful scientific career. And I remember how many times I was doing a very complex experiment with some, trying to investigate some subtle processes which are taking place in living cells. And the experiment after experiment after experiment, so many times, and the experiment would sometimes take 2 weeks. And you work like an ass practically day and night for 2 weeks, and you don't know the result. And then at the end, you put some photographic film there, and with completely, stunned heart, you develop this film to find out that it was again a failure, that it didn't work. Why I'm giving this example? Because science means you do certain things, but you do it very properly. You fulfill all the conditions which needs to be fulfilled, because if you fail in doing these details of the experiment, you will not get the desired results. And that's exactly what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying here. He says, this is a sure method of achieving love of God, provided you chant the holy name without offenses. And that's the science. The science means you do something, you're supposed to get this result, but you will get this result only if you're very exact and precise in fulfilling all the conditions of the experiment. So, and basically I'm jumping a little bit ahead in my talk, but what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling here to Sanatana Goswami in general is that Krishna consciousness is not just a sentimental belief. It's not just a blind belief, You want to be saved, no problem, Come to us, pay $5 a month, and, get the bill or the receipt that you paid it, and show it to the, to the guard of heaven that all my, membership fees are paid, and you're there. The door of heaven is open for you, no problem. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't come to give this. He didn't come to give some cheap process. He gave a scientific process, and he explains what is the scientific process here in these verses. He says that to go back to Godhead, you have to execute devotion. So please don't do it, it doesn't matter. You heard that I said about the exact conditions, so perhaps this side of the pillow will help me to say something. Okay. Anyway, so thank you. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, the point number 1, you can only go back to Godhead and spiritualize your existence and purify your existence from the traits of material contamination by devotional service. Out of all kinds of devotional service, the 9 are the most prominent. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmani, Vedanam. This, we all know this is the verse from the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Prahlad Maharaj says, this is the best thing which I heard from my teachers. This is the best way to live life. To hear about God, to speak about God, to glorify God, to remember about God. That's the best way to live this life. And then he says this verse, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says this verse, out of this, Taramadhye, Sarva Shreshta Nama Sankirtan. Out of all this, among all this, the best, Sarva Shreshta, the best of all is Nama Sankirtan. And if you chant the holy name, Niraparada, Namlali, Hare Prema Dham, you will achieve the wealth of love of God, Prema Dham. You will really achieve this. You will feel that I'm very wealthy person because this is the greatest wealth which we can achieve in this material life. So again, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu makes the point, very important point, is that we have to do something, and this doing something is described elaborately and sufficiently in Vedic literature, including Srimad Bhagavatam. That is the devotional service starting from hearing, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smarana, Pada, Sevanam. A little point of my own experience in this regard. I just again gave this interview today about my history, my devotional history, and my serious involvement in Krishna consciousness movement started from the point when Japa Prabhu, who is here now, I believe, even though I didn't see him yet, gave me a little Bhagavad Gita, not Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita was not there in Soviet Union at that time, or maybe there were a couple of copies for everyone. But the old translation of the verses of Bhagavad Gita. And I read this book very quickly, within probably a couple of nights, or even quicker. And very clear impression, which I remember till this day, was that it's a powerful book. It must be true. It cannot be otherwise because it's so convincing. It means that I have to change something in my life. This very important idea or conclusion, naturally, spontaneously, without anyone telling me this, surfaced. The idea was, if this is true, then I have to change my life. I cannot live the same life which I lived before if I accept this is the truth. So that's exactly what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also tells here. He says that it's not enough to believe in God. It's not at all enough to believe in God. If you believe, this faith in God is a responsibility. You become naturally responsible to walk this path. You have to do something. You have to change your life in a certain way so that your life would fit to this concept of, to this idea, or to this idea which is presented in this book or that book. The belief is useless if it doesn't change your life. I had this feeling twice in my life. Once was a few years before I read Bhagavad Gita, when I read first the Gospel of John. And the same sort of feeling appeared in my heart. This is a powerful book, there must be some truth in it. It means that I have to change my life, but I didn't know how to change my life. And there was nobody around who would tell me what does it mean to change my life. But in this particular instance, when I read Bhagavad Gita, my old friend Japa Prabhu was there, and he said, you should chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare. And I had no clue why I should chant Hare Krishna. I had no clue who is Krishna. I didn't know that he's even God, and who is Hare, what to speak about Hare or Rama, I had absolutely no idea. But he told me to chant, and I started chanting. Just because I was so shaken by this little book, Bhagavad Gita. It really impressed me so much. I wanted to change something, and he said, if you chant this mantra, your life will be changed. And he was right. My life changed.